Hello and welcome to a new episode from Jenny from the Pod. I'm your host, Jenny Minen, and in this podcast, we talk all things self-love, dating and relationships, and becoming your most authentic self. So today I have a very juicy episode for you guys because we're going to talk about intentionally dating people with an expiration date. Having an expiration date means it's good until a certain date. And in the case of dating, we're talking about until there's serious commitment required, there's serious work you got to put into a relationship, there's emotional labor required, and not just this fake intimacy to create a super quick bond. And once upon a time, I was in my dating with an expiration date era because it was so much fun. It was one of my favorite dating eras. There is low stakes, no pressure, no big emotions, and there's so many attractive, eccentric, successful, crazy guys out there that you can have a great time with. And I'm talking specifically probably out of my experience living in Los Angeles and being connected with people that live in LA or Miami or New York. And I do want to say you can still and also find great relationships in these cities. And a quick background about me after I got out of my long-term relationship / engagement, and I had been in my healing era and worked through my healing era. I wanted, have some time to focus on myself, my career, and my health. And I would say in some ways I was open to love, but I was also so open to having fun and just having the best time of my life and just dating with zero expectations. And sometimes when you have the least amount of pressure and you're just having a good time, you meet all these amazing people and you're traveling, you're just having good experiences, you sometimes go a little bit on this roller coaster of life. You can end up having a good time or even meeting the right person through that as well. And I do want to say that I believe that dating intentionally with an expiration date is not for the faint-hearted girlies. It really requires you to be a bitch, a B.I.T.C.H. And it's not what you think, what it sounds like, that you're being a bitch. What the acronym B.I.T.C.H actually stands for is babe in total control of herself. So that means you have to have a certain level of emotional control and reliance on your internal validation in order to really enjoy the process. Otherwise, you get caught up in big feelings. You just ask yourself, oh my God, how did I end up, liking someone that I didn't even like? Or they made the first move and you're getting all confused. So you really have to master this game of emotional detachment. And I'm not saying being emotionally cold or distant or not in touch with your emotions. We're all about being in touch with our emotions and having a deep, intimate bond with ourselves and the important relationships in our life. But what I'm saying is when it comes to dating with an expiration date and just having fun and no pressure when it comes to that dating process, you have to master to become a B.I.T.C.H, a babe in total control of herself. And here are a couple of things that I think are super important when it comes to mastering that process. First of all, you got to get really good in setting boundaries. And by that, I mean you have to be in control of how often do you see each other? What are the activities you do? How do you want to be treated? What is okay? What's not okay? Because if you know there's certain activities that might make it tricky to keep someone on distance, you got to be aware of what it is and how you can modify the way that you spend time with each other. Who are you meeting? Are you meeting their friends or even their family? That might be a little, tricky and blur the lines. What is it that you do? Do you know that when you go on a trip with someone, you just bond way quicker? Got to be careful of what it is that makes you become emotionally involved so you can just stay clear and neutral. Second of all, know yourself. I want you to know how you fall in love. And by that, I mean, are there things that you typically know make you fall instantly in love with someone or just fall for someone or have a crush? Is it when they give you a certain type of attention or if they bring you flowers or if you do certain activities with one another? I want you to be super clear and aware what it is that makes you fall in love with someone or fall for someone in general. And then you can even make a list. You can say, hey, I've noticed, and this is where self-awareness and the inner work comes into play. Oh, I noticed every time a guy, talks to me on a daily basis where he just gives me that reassurance, or if he, like plays into things that I really love, like it makes me fall for them so deeply. So I want you to create that self-awareness in that process of what it is that makes you become attached to a partner, so that you can steer clear from it or just be aware of it and do the internal self-regulation when it comes to losing your cool and giving up control. Third, do not rely on emotional validation from them. This is key, because the moment you get attached to their emotional validation and you stop focusing on internal emotional validation, you get addicted to it. It's so addicting to have someone who gives you this reassurance that you love, that you care for, that you're important. I know it's so easy to fall for it, and it's so lovely, and I have been there too, that I just think, oh, it's so fun when someone's so charming, so sweet, and so reassuring. And while you can enjoy that and have that be part of this whole process, it's so important that you still rely on internal validation. Don't give up the ways that you make yourself feel better. Don't give up the ways that you make yourself feel good about yourself, and doing self-care and the inner work and therapy and whatever that is, or working on yourself. So finding ways to still validate yourself and focus on internal validation, and seeing their emotional validation as the cherry on top just ensures that you're still in emotional control. 4, don't forget about the mission of becoming your best self. And what I mean by that is, you can have fun in the dating process, you can have fun dating with an expiration date, but do not make the whole dating thing the middle point of your life. Your main mission is still to become the best and most authentic version of yourself. And dating can be such a fun part of it, but it shouldn't be the middle point of your life, because again, you'll end up losing emotional self-control when you give into it, and when you're just thinking, oh, this is all that's important in my life and this is all that I care for, and then you lose sight of what's actually important for you. So always anchor yourself in what is the most important thing in my life right now, what am I trying to focus on, and what are the fun bonus things I get to do on the side. And I do think that this dating process can be very, very beneficial. And what I mean by that is, the most important and the most beneficial thing is that you date with less pressure. Sometimes having a lot of pressure in the dating process kind of ruins it, because we put so many expectations and hopes and beliefs and thoughts onto one person or onto one potential relationship that we just crush it with the pressure that we put on it, right? I think we've all been at this point where we just project a future onto someone. So we put so much importance onto what they're doing in the beginning, and we're maybe over-interpreting their behavior and overreacting because we're just so deeply in it, because we put so much pressure on ourselves that that has to be the right person. Another thing that's really great is that you get to know someone without having rose-colored glasses on. And what I mean by that is that often if we go in with a lot of emotional charge and just falling in love or having a huge crush, is that we tend to ignore the red flags. We tend to not see what's actually happening because we're just painting everything in a different color. So you're ignoring red flags, you're painting them white and green and whatever color you want, and you're just not seeing the person for who they truly are. If you learn how to just maintain emotional control and stay detached to a certain level, especially in the beginning process of dating, you get to actually see the person for who they are versus what your mind's making up and projecting for a future relationship. And I promise you, the energy and the vibe that you give off when you have no pressure during the dating process is such a different and entirely magnetic energy. I swear, like, men can feel that when you have this non-attached energy, when you're more relaxed, when you're more focusing on yourself and not let everything go and only focus on them, they can just tell. And I promise you, ask your guy friends, ask your brother, ask your father. I'm pretty sure that's true, because I can also tell the difference when I'm, my most magnetic self, and that's also when I'm most detached and most focused on myself and kind of just let the opportunities come to me, right? I always embody, I don't chase, I attract, and just kind of see what comes to me and have no pressure in the whole dating process and have no expectations or future projections onto that person. So a little fun story time when I dated someone with an expiration date. And this is a person that I had connected with 5 years ago, so really a long time ago. And he saw me on a dating app. I think it was Raya, and it was 5 years ago. I didn't match with him. I didn't even see him there, but he ended up sending me a DM on Instagram. We connected. We went out on a date, and he was always so pissed because I couldn't really remember the first date, but I do remember going on that date with him and us having a nice time, and that we connected, and then things, had just happened. I think it was, before COVID, and he hadn't lived in the same city as me, so when we chatted, it hadn't lined up. And then when he moved to Los Angeles, I had already been in the relationship with my ex, and he tried to get in touch with me multiple times, and I think he was a little frustrated that I never got back to him, but I was in a relationship. And then when I was single, I went back on the dating app, and funny enough, I saw his from, years ago, right? So we had matched on the dating app, and he just, he's laughing. He's like, I can't believe you matched me after 5 years. And he thought it was hilarious, and I thought it was hilarious, and we just, ended up talking, and we were talking about skiing and everything. And then he just, was like, hey, I'm going on this trip, I'm going skiing, you should come, bring a girlfriend, no pressure. And I was like, that sounds fun. And he kind of was communicating. He said, hey, I really liked you back then, and I've been really wanting a chance to kind of explore if this could be something in between us, and, I'd love to get to know you better. So, so he invited me to this trip. I brought a girlfriend, and it was a fun experience. I was like, okay, this is fun. This is kind of crazy, for a second first date to go on a trip together. But, I was like, it could be fun, and I'm there with my girlfriend, so let's see what happens. And then we get there, and he was high out of his mind. We met them at a restaurant, and I was questioning my judgment. I wasn't sure if something had happened or if he was okay, but he was just so high. And I'm not talking about weed or smoking a joint. And I must say, one of the things that I really don't love is substance abuse or substance use in general, in others. And I think there's a certain, way to use it recreational or for a good purpose, or sometimes to just have fun. But if there's constant substance abuse, that's just really a red flag for me. And the fact that, he was so excited to get to know me and see if there was a potential future between us. And that, that was the first time where I was like, his actions do not match his words, because he is clearly, not putting effort in to be presentable or to be present when I'm there. So it was the first time where I was like, this is kind of crazy. When he ordered a round of drinks, he ordered 2 drinks at a time, and he was already wasted. So that was really interesting. But overall, I gotta say, we had so much fun on this trip. So we just had a ball, there were so many fun events and parties happening, and skiing was so much fun. I love skiing, and it was just overall, a fun experience. We got to know each other better. But again, even on this very first trip, I just got to see this classic love bombing behavior from the get-go. So it really was, introducing me to others after a couple of days, saying this is going to be my future wife. She just doesn't know it yet. I see her as, the mother of my children. He invited me to things that are, months out, and just saying planning things for us. And I just was like, oh Lord, this is just so early on for him to say all these things, for him to plan these things and be so super invested. And while a lot of things were crazy, he had a lot of sweet sides about him as well. And sometimes, y'all, I just like to see it crash and burn, or maybe just being curious, or just I was just feeling very adventurous. And I knew from the beginning this is going to be a whirlwind romance. And the love bombing, guys, it was deluxe. I'm talking about the whole 9 yards, guys. And, this might be a very controversial take on love bombing. But when you know what you're getting into, it can be so much fun. those first weeks or months, man, they're going to be so much fun. And it's like the player is playing the player, so there's no harm in it, and you just don't end up losing, again, if you are the babe in total control of yourself, because you know what's up. And it continued in so many different ways. I mean, after that trip, we went 2 weeks later to another trip where we had so much time. We went to so many different islands. We even went to a private island where he had asked the owner of the island, or the right hand of the owner of the island, if we could get married on his private island. And he was being totally serious. He asked about like pricing and ideas of how many people could be there, and he was talking to me about dates about that. So like the whole 9 yards of like, let's get there quick. And it's so funny because that happens sometimes when people are either avoidantly attached or like, love to create like this close bond, because they sometimes, when they tend to be avoidant, they don't have the capacity to build long-term connection and the patience. So what they do is they do all these behaviors of creating quick, fake intimacy in order to bond someone to them. So there was a lot of that. And again, though, my God, we had so much fun. It was such a great time. The islands were so beautiful. Being on that private island was one of the best experiences I've ever had. I met so many amazing people. Like, everything was really fun and great. A couple weeks later, when I was visiting him, we actually even looked at a house. Like, he had taken me to look at a house that literally had a horse barn, a stall. I was fully transparent that if this energy and consistency of showing me how serious he is wouldn't be kept up, that I would lose interest. So I was really forward with that, because I will lose interest if it's, as I said, just a phase, or it's just a fun phase and that's great, even if it fizzles out. But if you want to court someone for the long term, it doesn't stop after a couple of weeks or a couple months. So there was a part of me that was open to seeing like, hey, maybe there is parts of him that are genuine. Maybe this is actually long-term connection that I could explore. Let's see how it goes. It was fun. I was excited either way to see where that would lead. And while I love me a good, grand, romantic gesture, don't get me wrong, my God, they're so fun. Grand, romantic gestures don't mean anything if there's no real base and connection. And by that, I mean putting in the effort to maintain normal connection and communication. And that was hard for him. It was hard for him to put in like the normal effort and work that it takes to maintain a genuine and healthy connection. And when you are in emotional control of yourself, you're going to be able to see that. You're going to be able to recognize that and walk in and out without feeling like you're having an emotional rupture happening within you. In a lot of cases, relationships with someone who's avoidant or who tends to love bomb or who's emotionally immature or tries to create this fake intimacy quickly has an emotional expiration date. And then it's just the time that you got to get moving, right? So there was a point in this connection where I knew, okay, we're past having the fun stage. It's getting more serious, and our communication and lifestyles, our ideas of health and what we put into our bodies just don't align. And that doesn't mean that he's a bad person. It just means he's just not for me. And I still think he's an awesome person, an awesome human being that I respect and that I think highly of in many ways. It's just the fact that not everyone's meant to be in your life forever, right? My favorite saying is, some people come for a reason, for a season, and for a lifetime, baby. So there's just different types of people that come in and out of your life, and that is okay, right there. That's where the practice of letting go comes in and is so handy in learning how to be a B.I.T.C.H. Again, a babe in total control of herself. And this is something I actually work on deeply with women in my program. So if that's something you're interested in exploring and learning how to do, I'll leave the link in my show notes so you can look at the work that I do. But in the meanwhile, you go on a journey of having fun and exploring life. So why not make it fun, right? Take dating with a grain of salt. If there's one thing that I learned, it's sometimes you can plan something so meticulously and plan it out for your life, and it's just going to end up being different than you expected it to be. Sometimes we see a path for ourselves, but it's not the path for our highest self and the path that the universe had seen and paved for us. So sometimes we experience detours or lessons that we have to learn or different circumstances in order to get to where we want. And you will get to where you want to be, but the journey, the people, the circumstances on the way there might just look different than you thought. I really think this last year has changed me irreversibly as a person. And I mean all the experiences, the ups and downs, the highs and lows, the lessons, the celebrations, the hardships, the funships, if that's even a word, all the experiences. And I really don't regret anything. I had so much fun. And as I said, this era was such a fun dating era for me. And I do think, we can just embrace the different dating seasons our love life has. So I hope you had fun joining me for this week's episode. I had so much fun talking about this topic because it's been on my mind for a while, and I do think there's just no right or wrong to approach dating, and I hope no matter in what season of your dating life you are, this resonates with you or helps you to see what you actually want or what you actually don't want. So I hope I see you in our next episode, and I hope you have a great week.